Hey everybody, welcome back to X-Wing Miniatures Theorycrafting with your boy Genghis John. I am here to talk about the new Confederacy heavy missile platform droid Starfighter. Now, after clicking on this episode, you may have remembered that last time I said I was going to talk about spam text. Well, enough time has passed since then, and pretty much everyone else and their mother has analyzed the crap out of spam text, and there's just really not anything left to say. So we've just been given these three new ships, so we're going to sort of move on to bigger and better things. I chose the HMP droid first because I feel like it's getting the least amount of attention from the new releases. So I wanted to sort of delve into this new, relatively unexplored ship first. But don't worry, we'll be getting to the LAT and the new FO shuttle soon enough. Now, I will start by saying that this ship is kind of an awkward duck, and I think that there are definitely some valid reasons why the HMP is getting less attention, less excitement from X-Wing players right now. But as we're going to explore in this video, I think that there are some ways to really make this ship work, and will add a lot to the CIS faction, and a much better X-Wing player than me can probably make this ship work just fine and find success with it. So we are going to dive right into the chassis of the HMP. It is one of only 3 ships in the game, I believe, that comes with a front primary 180 arc. Only 2 red die, but still a paltry 1 agility, but plenty of health to make up for 8 divided between 5 hull and 3 shields. Comes with the calculate action, target lock, red barrel roll, and a reload into a red calculate. Different pilots have different modification loadouts for the HMP, but I mean, generally this ship wants to be an ordnance carrier. Most of them have 2 missile slots, bombs, a crew slot, interestingly enough, and then also the tactical relay, which is interesting and powerful inclusion. As far as the dial goes, it has 7 red maneuvers, most notably a red stop and red 4 to 5 straights. And at the same time, it has blue 2 hard maneuvers. So you tell me what's going on here. It's very, very interesting dial. The chassis has a built-in ship ability called Networked Aim. You cannot spend your locks to reroll attack dice, but while you perform an attack, you may reroll a number of attack die up to the number of friendly locks on the defender. So it's the HMP's version of networked calculations, but with target locks. And while it on the surface seems like a decent ability, sort of like a built-in fire control, but even better, it's a little bit sucky because this ship is going to struggle to get locks because the highest pilot initiative is only a 3, and that, of course, is the bane of low pilot initiative ships, right? That's why in a lot of ordnance carrying ships, generics, you may see barrage rockets, because it just takes a focus. That doesn't take any work to get a focus, but getting a target lock at initiative 1, 2, or 3 is going to be tough. And so there are a few ways to overcome this that we'll talk about, but they're not super efficient compared to similar lists from other factions. The HMP comes with a configuration upgrade, Repulsor lift stabilizers at 3 points, and I think this is one of the most interesting aspects of the ship, and it adds what's called a side slip maneuver, which is basically strafing. Pretty cool. So inactive at setup, equip this side face up, reduce the difficulty of your straight maneuvers, so your red 4 and 5 actually become white. It's pretty good, honestly. After you fully execute a maneuver, you may flip this card. So on the flip side, active. After you reveal a bank or turn, you must perform that maneuver as a side slip, then flip this card. After you fully execute a non-side slip maneuver, that would be either a stop or straight, you may flip this card. So this is pretty funky. I'm going to explain a little bit how it works. So let's say you're on the mat and you want to do a 2 side slip to the right. All right, so on your dial, you're going to put in a 2 bank to the left, actually. Set your dial. Then when you reveal your dial, you're going to take that maneuver template, and instead of putting it in the front guides of the ship, you're going to move it over to the side opposite of the direction of the maneuver. So we revealed a 2 left, but you're going to move that template onto the right side and then move from the side. And then if you wanted to do it like a hard side slip, it actually it's sort of like if you're going to execute a hard turn, but there's a ship in the way, so instead of moving ships and putting the template down, you just do it off to the side. It's sort of like that, but instead of your arc pointing to the outside, it's actually going to go back around to the inside. So a really interesting maneuver. It just sort of allows you to strafe, which is cool. Be a flanker, really unpredictable moves. So I think that the maneuver itself is great. I think, however, that this is largely a trap card.
It's a trap!
So it's a 3-point configuration. That's pretty expensive, and you can't fit repulsors and strong enough missiles across 5 ships, which is pretty lame if you ask me. And so while strafing is cool, don't get me wrong, I think those points are better spent on stronger ordnance and an element in the list that grants target locks easier. Because strafing, while cool, you only have a 2 red dice primary anyways, so really you need to be spending points on something that is going to increase your offensive capability. So next I'm going to talk about 2 upgrades that can help the HMPs with what I see as their number 1 weakness, which is getting target locks to shoot ordnance and get their free rerolls. I'm going to talk about 2 options. Both cost 5 points, but I think one is clearly superior to the other. So option 1 is going with the tactical relay Kalani. And the nice thing about Kalani is that it doesn't require an action to get your locks. It happens during the enemy's movement. But this isn't super reliable. It has to be in your ship's bullseye, which can be tough, and it only works once per movement. So after an enemy ship moves, if it's in 2 to 3 of your ship's bullseye, only one of those ships can take a lock on it. They can't all just like gangbang target lock that one ship. So instead, and I think this is an upgrade that needs to be stapled to an HMP list, and that is the DRK-1 probes. So it comes with 2 charges. During the end phase, you may spend 1 charge to drop or launch 1 DRK-1 probe using a speed 3 template. This card's charges cannot be recovered. So this thing is launched with a 3, and it moves with a 2 straight or bank during the system phase. So this thing can get around pretty quick. It's got 3 agility and 1 hull. Otherwise, basically it allows ships to grab target locks by measuring from it instead of from the ship. So basically, this probe droid can be launched ahead of the squad, can be put in a position where your squad can gain locks on the enemy before they have an opportunity to get locks and shoot back at you. And so then when you end up in that first engagement, you can have target locks and calculates for some pretty potent double modded 3 dice attacks. Now I'm going to go through each pilot of the HMP, talk about ideal upgrades, some lists not so much for incredible dominant list structure, but more as a visual of what fits or mainly what doesn't fit together. So the lowest costed pilot is the Bactoid drone PS1. It's got the standard double missile slots, tactical relay, crew, device, and a modification slot. It comes in at 34 points, which is not a cheap ordnance carrier. The only thing better about it is the front 180 arc, but lots of bombers have turrets, or at least a turret upgrade slot that you can load cheaper than the 34 points a Bactoid comes in naked. And then we have another PS1 pilot, DGS 047, which reads, after you perform an attack, if the defender is in your front arc, you may acquire a lock on it. Then, if the defender is in your bullseye, it gains 1 strain token. So, while this pilot has an easier time getting locks, he has to first survive a round, perform a 2 dice primary probably, and then has to survive another round before getting missiles off. So it's not a super great alternative. It's only a point more. But yeah, these are your cheapest and honestly probably some of the best options that you have. So a list that we can do with these ships is a basic 5 HMP list with 4 Bactoids and 047. So I talked about missiles earlier, and I think cluster missiles are really the best option. They are half of the multi-missile pods, grossly overcosted. And the nice things about cluster missiles, they can break up swarm lists that will have an edge over yours. This is going to really discourage Nantexes from closing in, I think. And the really neat thing is that as you're taking locks, you can split them up between ships. You don't have to have all of your ships lock the same enemy, and that way, after you perform 2 attacks, you can have rerolls for both attacks. So a nice little sort of combo there. In this list, you also need DRK1 for better access to target locks, and you just have 4 more points for Discord missiles, because you have 4 points left over just for some extra fun. Note that the repulsor lift stabilizers are missing those 3 points. If you wanted to equip each one with that, you just can't do it. That's 15 points that has to go into helping ships get locks and the ordnance. The Genosian prototype comes in at initiative 2, and it is limited at 2 per list, and the chassis loses crew and bomb upgrade for double cannon modifications. And so with that, you definitely want to hook these babies up with synced lasers and repulsor lift stabilizers, and you end up with 2 really solid 44-point pieces. And they also come with a pilot ability. While you perform a cannon or missile attack, you may remove 1 tractor token from the defender to reroll up to 2 attack die. Really, this is just a bonus. This pilot ability is nothing special, except obviously when it goes against Nantexes, which is going to be a pretty nice counter to that. It's going to make those Nantexes think twice about taking the tractor token. The real bonus of synced lasers is a 3 dice attack that you don't have to work for. You can negate range bonus with a calculate token, which is neat, but again, simply extra. At initiative 2, you're probably spending a calculate on a defensive roll. And so these Genosian prototypes, what they really want to do is they can approach from the enemy flank and then just strafe for the rest of the game, not give a Roger about target locks, and just be a persistent threat. I like to call these guys the strafe kings. And so a list featuring the Genosian prototypes is a good old Sepi salad. So this is another 5-ship list with a legit ace pilot in Grievous. And here he's conservatively modded with Solus 1 and Crackshot. And then you also bring in a Techno Union bomber whose really only purpose is to carry the DRK probes for locks. And then you can also put whatever sub 6-point missile you want. And you even have enough room for an extra vulture. You can get some networked calculation synergy in there as well. I definitely think that unless you go with 5 HMPs, that the Genosian prototypes in a Separatist salad list is going to be the strongest iteration of the ship. That takes us to the Initiative 3 Separatist Predator and Onderon Oppressor HMP pilots. The only difference between these chassis, though, is the Oppressor's ability, which slightly bolsters the side slip ability. And so that reads, after you barrel roll or side slip, if you are stressed, gain 1 calculate token. So there are 4 red bank maneuvers, interesting enough. And so if you were to choose a 1 or 3 speed bank side slip, you don't get punished too terribly for it because you get a calculate token. So with that being said, obviously at least oppressors want to carry stabilizers. For our list, we've got the Predatory Oppressors, a 4-ship version of an all HMP list, and each HMP needs to be the best version of itself to pull its weight if you're only going to go with 4 ships as opposed to 5 ships. So you're going to load all of these babies down with clusters and stabilizers somewhere in the list. You're going to bring DRK probes for locks. You can bring Kraken to save some calculates early and give double mods, and you still have some points for Discord missile fun. Now, the thing with this list is that you shouldn't get initiative killed at initiative 3, and you also get an extra calculate to spend on defense for at least 3 of the 4 ships. But against aces, there is little difference between an initiative 3 and an initiative 1 pilot, and I think generally you're going to care more about the 5th ship than you will the higher initiative and stabilizers on these guys. Our last pilot, also capped at initiative 3, is DGS 286, which I think is going to be best as part of a droid swarm with a calculate stealing ability. Before you engage, you may choose another friendly ship at range 0 to 1. That ship transfers 1 calculate token to you. So while it wants to be part of a swarm, it seems counterintuitive to hurt another ship in the swarm. So really, I think that this pilot is pretty evidently the worst of the bunch. But for the sake of argument, we are going to come up with a 286 swarm DRK probes are going to be a must, of course. You can get the swarm locked when they already have some calculates built up with Kraken going into that first engagement with as many mods as you can muster. And we're going to put on 286 diamond boron missiles, which is going to help break swarms that would otherwise whip this list. DBS 32C can coordinate a target lock after 286 either calculates or steals one for double mods. And you're just going to fill in the rest with vultures, Precise Hunter, and Separatist drones to make the list all Initiative 3, or you can sub the Bomber for 2 vultures if you knock them all down to Initiative 1. My final assessment of this ship, it just can't be very good. So it wants to be an ordnance carrier, but the starting cost is expensive, especially compared to a naked Y-Wing or TIE Bomber, and it's barely cheaper than K-Wings, which I think is a pretty superior chassis by comparison. Overall, the HMPs have a low initiative, and it needs additional upgrades to help getting the locks. And what else comes with low initiative is a high risk of getting PI killed. Missiles, as an upgrade, they don't hit hard enough right now. I think that these ships could be better with access to torpedoes, even though those are, if you look at proton torpedoes, those are going to be twice as expensive as something like concussion missiles. I could imagine plasma torpedoes being a good upgrade on these guys. At the end of the day, this is an awkward ship, and ultimately it's probably best in salads with DRK-1 probes. I think the Genosian prototype version of this is probably the best. You can link it up with cannons, and with cannons you just don't have to worry about getting target locks as much. That is going to conclude our discussion on the HMP Droid Starfighter. While the side slip is a really interesting concept, I think there needs to be some pretty drastic points changes and some new upgrades come out before this ship can really compete in the meta. So stay tuned for some episodes on the other new releases, the LAT and the Xi-class shuttle. Looking forward to making those. Thank you for joining me on this episode of X-Wing Miniatures Theorycrafting, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. This is Genghis John signing off. Fly casual, and may the Force be with you.